Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, welcome to the Project SEDEC June meeting. This month we're talking about food deserts. It's our social justice issue this month. Just a little bit about Project SEDEC. We're a social justice organization for teens by teens. We're affiliated with CSIAR and we're Jewish led. And every month we pick a different social justice issue to inform people about. And yeah, we have guest speakers and we then do an action project to impact that certain issue. So this month is food deserts, as I said. So
We're going to be specifically talking about New York and even more specifically New York City. So as the video talked about, food deserts are areas where low-income communities that are commonly Black and Hispanic lack access to fresh and healthy food. These neighborhoods have a limited number of grocery stores that offer sparsely stocked shelves and overpriced food. Areas long considered food deserts include Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brownsville, Brooklyn, the South Bronx, and parts of Harlem. So food deserts are often caused by a variety of factors, including transportation issues, insufficient investment in infrastructure, and cultural norms around what foods low-income communities should consume. A common solution that's been proposed is to just put more grocery stores in these underserved areas, but as we'll talk about later, this isn't always an applicable solution. So some statistics: an estimated 750,000 New York City residents live in food deserts, and 3 million people live in places where stores that sell fresh produce are few or far away. And more than 230,000 of New York City's predominantly Black and Hispanic residents do not have access to nutritious and affordable food. And about 1/3 of the population receives aid from SNAP, which has been previously known as food stamps, and that is commonly not accepted everywhere. So the reason that full service supermarkets are not available in these low income areas is because major supermarkets have such a large amount of extra costs like maintenance, security, and crime control that they simply can't exist in these areas. Also, people who are in a food desert have been conditioned to eat food that isn't technically healthy or isn't actually like good to eat. And because of tastes and conditioning and lack of money, changing tastes isn't easy, and just simply adding produce isn't the best solution.
okay, so now we're going to be talking about something that's related to food deserts, and that's a food swamp. So food swamps are areas where unhealthy foods like high calorie fast foods and junk foods are more readily available than healthy foods. And one of the biggest food swamps in New York City is East New York, which is an area in Brooklyn. And as you've seen on the map from before, Brooklyn is a major place for food deserts and food swamps. So there are a lot of health consequences that come from food swamps, which you might imagine because of the amount of unhealthy food that there is. So obesity is a really big one, and a study showed that obesity rates are higher in areas with 4 or more unhealthy retailers for every 1 healthy option. So that's a ratio of 4-to-1. And it makes sense that that would happen because people have all of these options that are unhealthy and that most likely are less expensive. And so they go to these ones because they're more prevalent, they're more available. So, sorry, just have to let some people in. So yeah, you get more obesity. And so these findings also match East New York, which, like we said, is one of the food swamps in New York City, where 30% of the residents are obese, according to the NYC Health Department, compared to the city's overall obesity rate of 24%. And you might say, this isn't that big of a difference. You know, it's still under 25%. It's still less than a fourth. But when you think about it, this like little amount, that's really hundreds of thousands of people who are struggling with these diseases. And when you have these diseases like obesity, you can then get diabetes a lot more readily. So there are just a lot of negative consequences. And this is backed up by the fact that type 2 diabetes is 2.5 times more prevalent in food swamps, while adult type 1 diabetes is 1.5 times higher compared to areas without fast food. So there are just a lot of health consequences that can have really terrible impacts on people's lives when they live in these food swamps. So there are also many effects that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought, just like everything. The COVID-19 pandemic has derailed so many different things. And this pandemic increased food security in the Bronx by more than 40%. So that many people aren't getting this access to foods because many people have lost their jobs and they aren't able to afford healthy foods. So especially in food swamps, when they can't find that one restaurant, they will go to those other four where they'll be served foods for less, but unfortunately they're not as healthy. And it'll lead to many negative consequences. So at the beginning of the pandemic, BronxWorks, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, um, rushed to create a food resource guide because many people didn't know where to look for informations and where to look for food because they're surrounded by all of these really unhealthy places. And at the same time, when many people lost their jobs, they qualified for food stamps. But just like this lack of information, lack of knowledge about where to get food, they didn't know how to go about getting food stamps. So this COVID-19 pandemic really drastically changed the way that people consume food and how they live their lives.
So now we're going to talk about wealth's role in food deserts and specifically transportation. So 2.3 million people, which is about 2.2% of all US households, live more than a mile away from a supermarket and don't own a car. So as you can imagine, it makes it very inaccessible to be able to go to the supermarket and buy food and provide for your family. So as we see here, public transportation is either limited or it's unavailable. Supermarkets often are miles away from people's homes. And additionally, wealthy districts have 3 times as many supermarkets as poor ones do, so we can assume about 3 times more accessible than poor neighborhoods. So we can see the socioeconomic difference for how food deserts can impact people based on your income. So continuing on this, studies have shown that urban residents who purchase groceries in small neighborhood stores pay between 3 and 37% more than people living in urban areas buying the same exact product at supermarkets. So in the cities, healthier and around the world in the country, healthier foods are more expensive than unhealthy foods. And we can see this in a study that shows in 1989 to 2005, there was a 75% increase in the price of fruits and vegetables, whereas there was a 26% decrease in the price of fatty foods. So foods with higher cholesterol, more sugar, foods that are more fat, that's worse for your body, is more ideal for people in a lower socioeconomic stage, people that aren't able to necessarily afford this food. It seemingly becomes ideal, whether it's not necessarily, but it's easier to accommodate and it's easier to provide their families with these specific types of food. However, there are many health issues that can occur with buying fattier foods, although they can be more easy to monetarily to provide your family with. So now we're going to talk about race's role in food deserts. White neighborhoods contain an average of 4 times as many supermarkets as predominantly Black neighborhoods do. And these predominantly Black neighborhoods are usually smaller with less of a selection. And we can see how if they're smaller with less of a selection, we can assume that quality is not going to be seen as much as quantity to accommodate for the fact that it's a smaller market with less of a selection. When we see quality not being prioritized over quantity, this can affect health, as seen in many studies that show that heart disease kills more Black Americans every year than white Americans. Additionally, dietary restrictions, whether it's for a cultural reason, it's for a health reason, whether you're vegan, lactose intolerant, gluten allergies, it's not always easy to be able to accommodate in food deserts for your specific needs. And as I previously talked about, there are many health issues that come with living in food swamps and living in food deserts: obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, which are all relatively self-explanatory, having whether it's high cholesterol, having the glucose that you're consuming, high amounts of sugar. The lack of nutrition in food deserts can create obesity, which also causes diabetes and heart disease. So it's a domino effect that's created. And here we have a graph that shows the prevalence of diabetes and obesity in reported food swamps and food deserts. So if you guys just want to take a second to really look at it, because it's pretty just crazy.
Yeah, and if you think about this in comparison to the other maps that we've seen earlier in the presentation, you see how food deserts and food swamps really affect obesity and diabetes.
So there are quite a few active solutions, which I will go into detail. So first, Bronx Works, green carts, New York City rezoning, and some help from the city. So first with Bronx Works. Sorry, hasn't. Okay. First with Bronx Works. It is a nonprofit organization that works with City Shops Health Initiative, and it encourages people, partner bodegas, to make healthier options more visible and appealing to people. So the program conducts workshops and information sessions on cooking lifestyles, and they work with bodegas to add more healthy snacks near checkout counters so people see them as they're checking out. And they place signage in junk food aisles indicating why healthy alternatives are on sale and why they're better and why they should buy them. And they also rearrange the store layout so that fruits and vegetables are immediately visible, making it more appealing to buy. BronxWorks is funded by the city and private donations, and they also have a food pantry program. And recently, the resources have been stretched thin. The food pantry used to run every other week, serving around 100 families, but now it goes every week and serves at least 250 families. The pantries offer a variety of daily produce, dairy produce, meat, and canned goods so that people can choose what they want for their meals. So another solution are the city's Green Carts program, which offers affordable fresh fruits and vegetables to underserved areas and also provides jobs for vendors. The Green Carts are already in the streets of New York and in food deserts, areas that are food deserts, and that number is rapidly increasing as vendors obtain training, licenses, and permits from the city. This has been going on since around 2008. So some New York City solutions include the New York City rezoning. So officials in New York City have begun to look into rezoning specific areas to increase the amount of commercial structures that exist within communities, which allows residents to easier access things like supermarkets, grocery stores, and maintain consistent supplies of fresh produce and meats. City Council member Corey Johnson's Growing Food Equity in New York City agenda allows council members to stress the city's hunger problems, which hit hard low income and predominantly Black or Hispanic communities. And it proposes solutions that target feeding all residents better while also cutting food waste, boosting urban agriculture and food education. And another New York City solution is the Office of Food Policy, which was made to create a citywide food plan and oversee all food strategies across the city. And it aims to scale up successful food programs such as those targeting school nutrition in the Health Bucks program, which provides low-income residents with coupons for fresh fruit and vegetables. So some more things that have been helping are that neighborhoods that lack grocery stores qualify for the program of food retail expansion to support health, which stands for FRESH program. And this helps people access affordable, healthy food. So since 2009, the program encouraged retailers to set up big shops where produce takes about 10% of the retail space and perishable foods take around 30%. The council aims to use the supermarket need index to spot and slash more of the city's food deserts. Also, the creation of the Office of Urban Agriculture was to manage a new urban agriculture plan in order to expand and reap all the health, environmental, and economic benefits of community gardens while empowering community gardeners. Some other solutions include requiring food purchasing city agencies to create food waste prevention plans, improving meal quality in middle and high schools through more a deli-style cafeteria, and boosting budgets for school kitchens while running awareness campaigns for underused summer meal plans.